Hello, everybody, and a warm welcome to this really interesting deep dive into the bathhouse boom in North America. We're going to be starting in just a couple of minutes. We're just allowing a few stragglers to sign in and get sorted out. So if you bear with us just for a couple of seconds, and we'll be going ahead in a moment. It's like sitting here waiting for the school bell to ring.
I think you can sound of water or something. The sound of
look. I think that if they're not here now, then they've missed the boat.
Yeah. So let's go ahead.
Okay. Hello, everybody. My name's Don Genders. I'm the chair of the Global Wellness Institute Hydrothermal Initiative. And I'm really excited about being here today because today we're talking about something that I've seen almost like an underground movement coming forward in my role as CEO, also of Design for Leisure, which is the business that I started over 30 years ago, specifically working within the hydrothermal area. And it's been my life's passion, this business and everything about it, and to see the way that the trends predicted by the Global Wellness Institute had this year, number 7 on their list of trends was the growth of the urban bathhouse. To me, this is just something that is really so exciting that at last we're seeing bathing as a standalone practice within the whole wellness landscape. And I think that today with the group that we got gathered here, we've got some disruptors, we've got pioneers, we've got people coming into this just because they liked the idea of it and wanted to take it forward. And I'm really hoping that passion of everybody involved in this comes across. I'd like to now sort of move forward, and we are going to we're going to try and sort of get through this because we've got a lot to do in a relatively short period of time. But here with my co-chair and sort of co-conspirator on this, and in fairness, the lady that gave birth to this whole idea, Anne Kennedy. And Anne's a human-centered design expert. 15 years in experience in building brands, inside out, startups, Fortune 500 companies, and across a whole range of different industries. But all that is behind her because today she's currently the CEO of Alchemy Springs, and this is a social wellness and urban bathhouse brand and concept, building up and starting off in San Francisco. So here we go. Anne, tell us, why are you here?
Thanks, Don, for the intro. First of all, it's really exciting to see so many of the faces and names on this call. Many of you I've spoken with over the past few years on my journey. And if you would have told me 4 years ago, when I set out to create an urban social bathhouse in San Francisco, that it was pioneering or innovative, I would have thought you were crazy. I mean, this is one of the oldest traditions in the world. I'd lived in Europe for a decade. I'd lived in New York City, and even San Francisco had a handful. But people were looking for something that was harder to find. And they wanted community and connection, and also intentional, well thought out design. So we set out on a mission to create a sort of real urban social bathhouse. And I had no idea how challenging that would be. As we started to speak to investors, this interesting dichotomy appeared. I mean, on one hand, out of the gate, everybody loved it. They said, this is amazing. This is a home run. This will do so well. I can't wait to be your first guest or your first member. But they were hesitant to invest It's because they didn't understand the business model. They hadn't really seen it before. They were expensive to build, and they just didn't believe that you could make that kind of money on the back end. And particularly if they were coming from other hospitality industries or real estate, they just didn't believe the numbers. So those who know me. I made that my mission to go out and get the facts and convert them to believers. And that led me to sort of my journey of speaking to a lot of folks on this call and others, bathhouse operators, people that had their pulse on different trends. And I learned why it was so challenging, which is you can't compare apples to apples. Every bathhouse was different. You know, some were heavily focused on massage, and the bathing amenities were kind of what you did afterwards or before. Some were no talking and not social. Some were separated by gender. Some were small, some were big, some were attached to gyms, some were attached to hotels, right? It was very difficult to find comparable data. But the exciting part, and why I'm excited about today, is there was some commonalities. Almost all of them were growing. They were reaching capacity more regularly than they ever had. If they had membership programs, their members were going 4 or 5 days a week, which blew my mind, right? So many of these were expanding footprints, considering franchising, scaling to second locations. And this is all during COVID, right? So COVID only accelerated demand for this from the consumer health and sort of urban landscape, which we'll talk about. So there was a hallelujah moment for me when the Global Wellness Institute came out with their data, because it finally put some numbers and meat on the bone of what I had been seeing anecdotally for the last sort of 18 months. So I'm sure many of you on the call also have been through this same struggle and journey, and I'm excited to share what I've learned. I'm convinced that there's never been a better time to build an urban bathhouse in North America. And what's exciting is that we don't have the same history and tradition as the rest of the world. So I think our chance is, how do we reimagine it in a way that's authentic to us and inspire the rest of the world? So we're gonna get started with today. If you have any questions, feel free to pop it into the chat. These are many of the folks that I've met along my journey. We'll try and answer your questions at the end, but it is a pretty packed agenda. So first up, we are going to dive into the consumer landscape with two individuals that are deep in this emerging soak culture. The first is John Stein. He's a partner at Alchemy Springs and an expert in community and building spaces that are designed to enable connection. He's worked with Summit Series, an organization, for over a decade, and was part of the team that purchased Powder Mountain in Eden, Utah, to create a town for the next generation artists, creatives, and entrepreneurs. We also have Robbie Bent, founder of Othership, a first of its kind emotional regulation platform with a mobile app and physical spaces. It uses peak experiences like heat, ice baths, and breath work to inspire awe and build belonging. The company is backed by the founders of SoulCycle, My First Million, On Deck, Levels Health, amongst 70 other angels. So, John, you're going to be first up. Tell us about your experience and why do you think there's more demand for social bathing right now?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Ann. Yeah, I mean, one of the first things that we did after purchasing Powder Mountain was we kind of built this small spa of sorts, and our job was to actually study the best ways for people to, connect and build authentic relationships and friendships. And so I think the three factors that make this, the right time for this bathing boom are: one, is that the wellness lifestyle is at an all-time high. People are looking for ways to maintain a healthy lifestyle, and even in their, their social life. So instead of going to a hard workout class and then everyone going to drink after, it's like, what if there was a way that we can all come together, hang out, and heal and recover our bodies after? This is more of the mindset now. And same thing with COVID. I think people are also now more aware of their personal health, right? They want to optimize their immune system, increase their energy, and do things that put them at their best. And three, and this is something that's really deep to me, is that I just feel like, we've gotten a bit disconnected from COVID, right? And even more connected to our technology, and it's caused somewhat of a maybe even like a loneliness pandemic. And this has made people desire and search for spaces that have actual human connection. So, you know, the thing I always say is like, the bathhouse is the last frontier for no cell phones, right? It's like, you're not going to bring your phone into a 140-degree sauna. But anyway, you know, speaking of this, I think Robbie Bent knows a little bit more about that experience.
Yeah, so Robbie, I'd love for you to tell us a little bit more about Othership, particularly sort of how you got started, which I love, and tell us about who is your target market and what are they seeking?
Absolutely. And so pretty interesting. I personally used bathhouses to get sober. And so I was struggling with addiction for 10 years. And after I got sober, was looking for something to do, just like John said. So I'd go to the bathhouse at night and I was like, wow, this is incredible. Like, no phones, everyone's connecting. And I lived in, 15 countries around the world while I worked for Ethereum. And we'd always go to the bathhouse on Friday night. Everyone would have an amazing chat the next day. We'd be in a WhatsApp group. Like, that was awesome. So I got really obsessed with the cold. I did the Wim Hof training. My shower didn't go cold enough. And so I built an ice bath in my backyard, and every night would have people over, and started practicing, like really guiding them through like a 0-degree ice bath, using different meditation tactics, sound bowls, essential oils, all kinds of things. And as it became winter, we built up this community of thousands of people that were just coming to the backyard for this like ice bath. And if you see here, there's a picture of my garage with the clear light sauna and ice bath. And so we built that because it was winter, and that just grew, and it was just a little side project for neighbors. And just through word of mouth, we started doing classes. And there was this idea around like, okay, people struggle to meditate, they're addicted to their phone, but when they get in the cold, they can really let go. And so we saw like lawyers and bankers and engineers for the first time coming in, and the more people came, the more they made friends, the deeper our classes got. And we realized we really had something. So we started teaching breath work and sound baths and, anger releases, where we do saunas in the complete darkness built based on indigenous cultures, and have people bring up moments of anger and yell together. And so I'm partnered with two trained sauna masters from Europe, and we kind of fused off-goose, breath work, meditation, and sort of a Soul Cycle or Barry's boot camp style, and built the first ever sauna classes in the world. And so what you see here on the bottom left, we have a 50-person sauna with a crazy sound system, and people book up or down sessions. So it's like, maybe Wim Hof breathing with some vocal toning and a gratitude release. And so the idea is, can you take what people were doing with therapy and make it available in a community at a much cheaper price? And we're just seeing it explode. So it's been open for 2 months in Toronto. The business is profitable. We're signed a lease for our second location, and we're looking in the US. So people come for these classes, and then at night they hang out, just like John said. And who does it serve? It literally serves everyone, which is strange to say, but it's amazing. So we'll have people who are like 23, 24, and they come in instead, Friday night for a dance party instead of going to the traditional bar. We have people who are, into biohacking and recovery and listen to the Ben Greenfield and Dave Asprey, and they come for health. We have creator nights where people who love creating content, shooting movies, stuff like that, they come to get inspired, and they use the ice bath as a way to connect with their creativity. We have people that come instead of like a birthday party. So there's just an enormous range, whether it's, coming in the morning for something more health related and quiet, whether it's somebody who, has been on a psychedelic medicine retreat and is coming back and like looking for their community. What I think is happening, that John said, is this massive community drive around things like psychedelic medicines, meditation, biohacking, health and wellness, sober, curious lifestyles. Every one of those things is growing excessively. And because of that, there's nowhere to hang out. Like the traditional bar, sporting event, concert, it doesn't suit those people. So the bathhouse as the community center for all those groups, like we're at inning one of 100x growth in North America, because all of those things are growing. So that's sort of what we're seeing. And then we even wanted to provide a deeper experience. So we built a breathwork app, kind of like Calmer Headspace. And so we do the breathwork sessions in the space. People learn about using their breath to control their nervous system, and then they get access to the app as being a member, and they can use the app at home to connect more deeply.
Well, I do love the app. I think it's really different than what's on the market. So I will happily plug it. I use it several times a week, including last night to calm down and get ready for today. So yeah, I'm really inspired by what you're doing in this space. When I talk about how are we gonna innovate this ancient tradition, I always think of you and the programming and what you're doing. And hopefully, you know, we can inspire the rest of the world and things like that. So
Awesome. And for anyone listening, if they want free access to the app, you can DM me on Twitter at RobbieBent1, and I'll happy to gift you with anybody with free membership who's into bathhouse culture, because it's important to us.
great. Don, back to you.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Okay, well, here we are looking at some urban trends. And yeah, I said a little bit about that already, as to how we are moving forward. How we're seeing this great movement moving forward generally within the United States and indeed beyond. And it gives me pleasure now to talk to two people, or to introduce two people, completely different aspects, bringing this into us today. First of all, we got Robert Hammond. Robert's claim to fame is he's the co-founder of the High Line. And what to do with a disused railway line, when you find it running through the middle of New York, and that's taken him, kept him busy the last 20 years, and today he sees the onset of a massive career change, because he is now joined the Thermae group, European group developing massive bathhouses across Europe, and recently moved into the UK, with a huge plan now to come into the United States, of which Robert is heading up for them. And so we are excited to hear about what Robert's going to tell us. And then I'm also delighted to welcome Rodney Fong, who's an urbanist, a San Franciscan business owner, who held a wide variety of civic, tourist, and travel-related positions, and involved in organizations, including the Fisherman's Wharf community, the Benefit District, the Bay Institute, the San Francisco Travel Association, and the California Travel Industry Association. Rodney's also director of the Fong Family Foundation, was a third-generation operator and owner of the Wax Museum at Fisherman's Wharf. So we're going to start, first of all, and I would like to ask, please, to Robert Hammond, why are community spaces so critical for the future of urban cities, Robert?
Yeah, well, thank you. And feel free to call me Robbie. This is actually my last day after 22 years of the High Line. So it's sort of an appropriate ending of 2 decades and the beginning of a new one. So I'm a newbie in this field, so I'm learning so much just listening to this. I've always been a fan of baths and saunas and things like that. But I think one of the reasons the High Line was successful is it came at a time where, in the past, people sort of sought different things at different places. I think of them as boxes. You went to a museum for art. You went to a theater to see a performance. You went for a park for nature. You went to a restaurant to eat. And now people want all of those things together. And the main thing they want is to have experiences with other people. Whereas you used to go maybe, with your partner or a friend to a museum. Now people want to go together. And I think that's really driving, like what Robbie's saying, people are looking for more community in totally different ways. And so that's what we saw happening on the High Line. People were coming to have nature, to see art, to walk, to be with others, and do it all with other people, and be a part of a city and a part of a, and even, I think it's even, and I find this, when I go to a sauna, you don't even have to talk to the person next to you, but you have that communal experience. The same thing in parks. You go to parks, you a lot of times you never meet anybody, but you're with them in a different way. And I think it's this subconscious primordial feeling that, and nature and heat do that for you. And so I think, one of the things I'm interested in is how do you combine bathing and plants and nature? So excited to learn from so many of y'all.
Okay, I mean, one of the interesting things here is, of course, what are people looking for out of these spaces, Robbie? But the fact is that you are a disruptor. Or Therme Group are a disruptor, certainly in the United States. How do you see that happening with regards to you're not a hospitality-based operation. Yeah. You are an urban environment for people that come and enjoy.
Yeah, and just so this picture is an image of what the therma that they're looking to build in Toronto. It's on Ontario Place. Most of the thermas that are operating right now in Europe are sort of outside of cities. And one of the things Therma wants to do, and we want to do in the US, is bring them into urban spaces and also verticalize them. How do you put 500,000 square feet in the city? And so, to me, I don't know of the disrupt. It's a great question. I think for me, the challenge is going to be, and what's interesting is, to me, the reason I like Therma is it's a combination of a lot of things, sort of like the Highline. It's sort of like an indoor botanical garden, a water park, pools, saunas, and art all put together in a really big space. And what I hope is, I don't see this. One of the things I think is great about this community is it's not really competitive. I mean, Therma is this big experience. It's like going to Disneyland or something. But then you're going to go back to your neighborhood and go to your local place, or vice versa. And I think what we're all trying to do is bring new people into this culture. And I was just reading a book on Roman bath, literally Roman baths. And, there were the huge caracalas, like several of those, and then there was like 1,000 little ones in Rome. I mean, I think the opportunity for this is so big. And that's what I'm excited about. And I want to thank Anne for fostering that feeling of not competitive, that we all, can help each other. And what we're all trying to do is just getting more people into this.
Thank you, Robbie. Yeah, no, and I think that's that whole element of collaboration. I mean, the fact is that we're all here today. We're all collaborating together, and we're all trying to help each other to further this movement. I think that's fantastic. But moving on to Rodney. Welcome, Rodney, and thanks for joining us today. But one of the things with the communities, and I think it's we need to address it because everybody's asking this question. I haven't seen it adequately answered, but how do you feel that cities are recovering and rebuilding, in our post-COVID generation?
Thank you, Don, and nice meeting everybody. And I agree with Robbie's comments about how urban areas are coming back, how I think we've all suffered some trauma to some degree through COVID-19. We've all realized the power of friends networks and pods and who we want to spend time with. And I think the thermal world is an exact area where you can pick and choose maybe who you want to be with and pick topics of different speakers that maybe are happening or treatments that are happening that people are experiencing the same thing. So I'm coming this to you from a couple different angles, from a personal angle, from an urban planning curiosity angle, and from a business angle. Basically, every time I travel somewhere, my second Google search after I've looked at the restaurants and hotels is if there's a soaking place. I was turned on to ryokans in Japan and onsens in Japan. And I think America, frankly, is just kind of waking up to something that's been going on for centuries. In Japan and in Kyoto, there are wonderful soaking experiences that come along with food, come along with conversation, come along with art, nature, landscape, art that is enjoyed. So I think this is a fascinating time, the same way that America went through a yoga boom. And as Robbie discussed, there's different ways to experience yoga. Some of them want a gritty neighborhood spot. Some of them want an ultra clean experience and their core yoga experience. Some want 100 people outdoors, and that's very different. The soaking opportunity, I think, has that same level of potential as well. What I think has also come out in the urban setting is, at least in San Francisco, we suffered quite a bit here, and we're all packed in. Americans, for some reason, have a notion that they have to work hard and then enjoy their 2 weeks of vacation and relax then. And I think hopefully through COVID, we can realize that having a business meeting while taking a walk down Christie Field along San Francisco Bay, or maybe even taking a meeting in a sauna with someone else, you want to get to know them, is something that's important, and maybe will start to happen. But tourism for San Francisco represents about 1/3 of our economy. I'm currently the CEO of the San Francisco Chamber of Commerce, so keep the recovery and the business recovery piece in mind, at the top of mind. Tourism represents 1/3 of the economy. Relaxation as part of the tourism, ecotourism piece, I think is a very important aspect. I think what's cool about this and other things is that when you get to the opportunity to expose something to them for the very first time, that's exciting. I think that's exciting to share treatments, share what maybe they feel a little bit nervous, apprehensive to do for the very first time, and fall in love with it. So we're proponents of trying to bring back San Francisco. On the retail side, I'll sort of end with, retail is going to be very different than it was before. Experiential retail, spending time more than just 50 minutes in one store and spending a significant amount of time dining, meeting, relaxation, business meetings in one space is important. Guys, I want you guys to take a look at a restoration hardware store that just opened up in San Francisco at Pier 70. This is a phenomenal space. It is a meeting space, it's a retail store, it's a restaurant, it's a bar, it's a private dining, private event venue. And so, as Robbie pointed out, spending more time with a certain group of people in a space that can offer many different things is really important. I think the way retail is going to go, at least in San Francisco. So highly bullish on San Francisco, of course, and looking forward to what the future brings.
Okay, thank you, Rodney. And I mean, one of the things here that we're looking at the screen now, and we can see the historic site of the Sutra Bars in San Francisco, and I mean, I get the feeling that you're very excited about the whole prospect of what's happened with Alchemy Springs, and the idea of bringing a new modern bathhouse inspired by the past, but looking to the future to San Francisco. And do you believe that will be beneficial to the city?
I do. It's funny you mentioned that. We all are trying to reinvent ourselves, but we don't have to look too far in the past to see what worked before and bring it back to life. Simple enjoyment, simple pleasures are really a core piece of all of our happiness, and we all want happier people living next door to us. So I think that's so important. Sutro Baths, if you get a chance to take a Google search of Adolf Sutro, I mean, his opulent dream of creating Sutro Baths and the Cliff House was just amazing, over the top experience. And so I think he did that to share that with the rest of the world. And until that fire occurred, he was able to do that.
Okay, thank you, Rodney. Okay, well, look, this is all fantastic, exciting stuff, and supporting everything that we all believe is right. But hey, look, thank you. Now, Anne, back over to you.
Great, thanks, Don. So I'm really excited about our next speaker. They really are one of the country's foremost experts in water therapy, and they're here to talk about some of the healthcare trends that are driving the rising boom of bathing. So I'd like to introduce Dr. Marcus Kaplan. He's a primary care physician with over 20 years of hydrothermal healing experience. He serves as the director of hydrothermal medicine for the Balneology Association of North America, which we're going to get a lesson on what that is, and is the North American liaison to the International Society for the Medical Hydrology and Climatology. He specializes in the treatment of medical conditions through the use of hydrothermal applications. He also serves as an advising medical director for many geothermal resorts across North America, and I am proud and lucky to say he is a partner in Alchemy Springs as well. So, Dr. Kaplan, first of all, could you tell us what is balneology and what's driving more awareness of and demand for this kind of therapy?
Yeah, thanks for the intro. And yeah, it's a real funny word, right? It's a mouthful, but it literally means the science of therapeutic bathing. And it's an academic and research study of how therapeutic bathing affects the body and how we can use it as a health agent. And, I think what I really want to focus on with this slide and kind of in the context of the conversation we're having today is the emerging health culture of the 21st century and how social spaces and hydrothermal in particular is the key to this emerging paradigm. And I think we're seeing an intersection of technology and the kind of pandemic awareness to health that brought out, as well as this emergence of these hydrothermal social spaces, which people have been explaining so far on the talk. And, the post-COVID health reality, I think we've seen this evolving landscape in healthcare. It's been ongoing, but COVID really served as this catalytic moment where things really exponentiated in their progression. So if you look at Global Wellness Institute, if you look at the emerging health trends over the last 5 or 6 years, what I think is really telling is that you notice every year those trends get larger and larger and larger. We have an emerging, an expanding amount of spaces that are actually opening up to the concept of health and wellness as being kind of core to their identity. And this is showing up today in 2022 as this great refocusing on health as a value in our culture. There was a 1,200 person survey, 62% post-pandemic of Americans, they believe that their health is more important to them than before. I think we've really come to a point where we understand the value of our health and what that means to be healthy as a kind of a preventive measurement, preventive kind of attitude towards life. People are also living longer, but decades longer than they have in the past. And so the concept of aging in a healthy way is a new kind of paradigm that people are really exploring, because it's not enough to live to 100 if you spend the last 15 years hooked up to a machine and medicated. It's how do we create healthy longevity. And I believe hydrothermal has the solution to that, because and we're going to dive into this a little bit, but this is how we actually strengthen and invigorate the systems of our body. One of the things that I believe, I think technology is one of the things that's actually going to be driving us into the social spaces for healing. Our doctor visits have become Zoom calls, and that's great. It makes for an ease of access, but we've lost the ritual around our healthcare. We've lost even just going to the doctor's office and derobing and getting in the gown and getting your vitals read. I mean, there was ritual to that space, and now I think we have the opportunity to ritualize our health practice in these social spaces. And I'm really excited about that concept, actually. Technology has also kind of given us as humans a deeper insight into what it means to be healthy. We have the ideas of the quantified self. We have smart tech and wearables that kind of are constantly giving us feedback as to how our environment is affecting our body, and how we are in our engagement with our environment, how that is affecting our health. It's giving our consciousness a deeper understanding of how our biological machines work. And that's spilling over into nutrition as well. We're rethinking old paradigms about what healthy food is, and how individuality in nutrition really plays out, how individual bodies affect different foods. So all this is to say that we're increasing our interest in health outcomes in our culture in America. Plus, we're increasing these tools to better empower health. Plus, there's this need for new ritual space around health practice. And that's where hydrothermal social spaces become the canvas for this emerging health culture, right? So why is hydrothermal the key? So this is really my specialty, and this comes to what are the effects of hydrothermal therapy on the body. So this is what I do in my practice. I'm one of the few physicians in the US that's trained and specialized in these skills, and I teach other doctors and healthcare professionals on the applications and case management using these therapies. And what I want to do real quick is just kind of run through what the research shows, what systems of the body are affected with hydrothermal therapy. And we could spend a day on each one of these, but I'm just going to bullet point them for you. It starts with the outermost layer, our skin. you soak in water, the first interface that happen that the body experiences that effect is through the skin and its feedback into the brain. We've talked a lot already about, the psychological effects of social spaces and hydrothermal spaces, but there's also the internal effects on the cardiovascular system, the musculoskeletal system. Soaking in water increases lymphatic circulation, it aids in detoxification. It increases our immunological activity. So it's a great preventive measure for infectious disease. It potentializes and sensitizes hormonal signaling, and can help with neurological pain. There's oftentimes there are intractable neurological pains that drugs can't touch, that hydrothermal therapy will actually create easement. And the reason this is because of the regulatory effects that it creates. It's all those systems being stimulated at the same time. It creates a synergy that's great, where the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. And those are the mechanisms of fortification. In Europe, so I have colleagues in Europe who they are balneologists, doctors who their primary therapeutic are geothermal bath prescriptions, and they soak their patients, and they write the script, the patients go soak, and the national healthcare systems cover that treatment. And that's where I want to see. I believe that's where we're moving in the United States, as kind of a healthcare landscape consciousness. And I believe that spaces like these urban bathhouse spaces are going to be the drivers of building that demand in the health culture. And I'll just finish up with one last thing, which is that with the COVID pandemic, the CDC released a list of disease states that would make it, pre-existing conditions that make a much more higher risk of getting a serious infection if you get sick with COVID. Things like cancer, kidney disease, lung disease, heart disease, obesity, diabetes. And what I really want to drive home is that all those systems that I just listed out that are affected by hydrothermal therapy are how we can reduce the burden of these pre-existing conditions and prepare ourselves really in a truly preventive way for the next wave of epidemics or pandemics. God forbid we get there. But so I do believe that we're at the kind of really interesting launch point for kind of this 21st century health culture. Thanks.
Yeah, and I just wanted to pick up on something you said, Marcus, because what I learned when I found out that members were going 3, 4, 5 days a week to bathhouses. I mean, that just blew my mind. I would have guessed from the onset, I would have thought maybe a member goes 3 times a month, not quite every week, but maybe. And I think it is literally there's almost like a natural high that they get from their systems. It becomes a ritual that they almost want and need every day. Like when you really get into yoga, you can't stand how your mind and your body feels when you don't do yoga. So for me, that's sort of the proof, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I explain it to patients. It's like, it's exercise for the internal systems of the body. And so, yeah, just like going to the gym or going to a yoga class, the more you do it, the stronger that gets.
Yeah. Thank you. That was great. So we're going to switch gears a little bit and talk about sort of the business case, right? I mentioned this earlier. A lot of people aren't familiar with this business model. And the more I dug in and the more I learned, I went, oh my gosh, this is one of the strongest business models I've seen in hospitality. Why are not more people not doing this? So for this section, we're going to have Dawn and Janine, which I'll introduce you to in a moment. Dawn, in addition to being CEO and founder of Design for Leisure, they're creators of award-winning hydrothermal areas, but he's also the chair of the Global Wellness Institute's Hydrothermal Initiative. They're publishers of the must-have, I know several of us have used this on this call, the Guide to Hydrothermal Spa and Wellness Development Standards. It is the Bible if you want to develop thermal or a bathhouse. Some of Dawn's clients include Caesar's Palace, Canyon Ranch, Disney, the Four Seasons, and Six Senses, and more. He's passionate about saunas and bringing authentic sauna bathing to North America. He also is head of CLOFs in North America, They're the distributor for the German manufacturer Klopf's, who do a lot of very high-end saunas. And then we have Janine DiGioacchino. Janine joins us from QC New York, the first US location for QC Terme, an Italian-based spa and resort company. She has over 20 years experience in the leisure and entertainment sector across North America. She's hyper-focused on branding and promoting immersive wellness experiences. And she is currently CEO for QC Terme based in New York. And they have just opened their first location, which we will no doubt hear about. So Don, let's start with you. I'd love to understand, why is the spa industry catching on to hydrothermal focused spas?
Okay, well, I don't know if we're catching on. I think we got to be fair. I mean, the Romans were doing a pretty damn good job with this 2,000 odd years ago, with the things that Caracalla and Diocletian were building. So maybe we're just coming full circle and reimagining every city with a bathhouse. I think one of the important things that we are beginning to see is that going to a spa, and by a spa, I don't mean somewhere where which is purely pampering and beauty therapy based. I'm talking about specifically a bathing environment or a hydrothermal bathhouse. Now, what we're seeing is that it's being separated from the hospitality industry. If we look at everything we're looking at on the screen, now is hospitality industry based, and that's because we don't have too many examples of urban environmental bathhouses. The trend is coming. It's been moving on, and we've been working on projects for quite a few years. But the one thing that we're seeing, and Mia in her comment earlier on, Mia Kirikos, an old industry friend of mine here, and Mia pointed out that these are becoming part of communities. It's not just within a city. It's becoming part of a living community. But what it's really becoming is part of our daily way of life, as opposed to something we go to do on vacation, or we travel to a destination spa, or we go because somewhere is offering something fantastic and amazing for us. What we are beginning to see is that these new businesses coming up, large and small, are offering communities the ability to bathe on a regular basis. This is not something that you do, on your 2-week vacation any longer. This is something that you can do every third day. You can be a member, you can be part of it. It's in your community. It becomes part of your lifestyle. I mean, health clubs did this, I say health club, gyms, fitness centers, generally categorizing them. They did that incredibly successfully, but then they did nothing else. The whole bathing side, just didn't ever become included. It was just an amenity. You might have something, dumped in a locker room. There might be a nasty, smelly sauna or steam room, a few square feet, as saying, oh, well, we got to have one of those. Nobody ever knew why. They just thought they had to have them. But today, this is really, really moving forward. The people want a way to relax, and they want different ways to relax. And nothing is better than the thermal pleasures associated with hydrothermal bathing.
Thank you, Don. Janine, I would love for you to talk a little bit about QC Terme. They obviously have an incredibly successful history in Italy and Europe, and New York is sort of the first venture in the United States. But what makes hydrothermal a great business model, and what's maybe different about a social spa?
So, as some of you may know, QC Terme is a business that's been around for almost 30 years. Our owners, it's a family actually, who wanted to bring back Roman baths and the idea of social bathing. And, I'm relatively new to the space. And when I listen to all of these speakers, I find it so fascinating that the education, like I'm learning, I'm sitting here thinking, I don't know that. That's something new. That's something really fascinating. And I feel like the education, if we can provide education to people about not just the overall wellness benefits, but I would certainly love to bring Marcus along with me to my investor meetings. So with your bullet points, because I think they'd be really, really helpful. Because where I come from, my background is largely the entertainment industry, theme parks and attractions. And I did that for most of my life. And the one thing that I remember and learned most from that business was, we need to be able to show ROI. We need to be able to say, here's the business case. This is what you're going to get from it. And it's not always dollars and cents. Most investors are looking for the profit side of it. But I've done a really good job over the years of convincing them of other key performance indicators, which are really important to business, its profitability, and how it's positioned in the, not just in its industry, but in the world. So I'm off topic a little bit, but I'm finding this incredibly fascinating that there is still such a window of opportunity for education. I think that I'm hoping that I can bring some value to that by bringing in the business side of it, creating that business case, which makes sense and gets people excited, not just for the profitable side of it, but also for the benefits that come from, hydrotherapy and what that means. But I can certainly tell you that when I joined this business 3 years ago, I was thinking about massages and facials. And I think that we are so much more than that. So there's still lots of work to be done. So, to answer the question, what makes a good business model? It's a no-brainer, it's the economics. This is a fantastic business with really great margins. And it's really riding on the tail of the experience economy, which is coming off the back of the pandemic. And, that's the one gift that COVID has given us, if I can say that. The gift it's given us is the ability to really educate people who are now hyper-focused on wellness and overall well-being. And I'm excited about it. I'm excited to be a part of it.
Yeah, one of the big ahas that I had as I went out to sort of gather the facts, and I guess it makes sense if you step back and think about it, but we never had to before. But staff shortages are a real thing right now, particularly in San Francisco, one of the most expensive cities in the world. I'm sure the same in New York. Restaurants are wanting to open and they don't have enough staff to be fully open. Everyone wants to eat, but it's the staff. And hydrothermal spas have such sort of relatively low staffing. I mean, the old model, which would have been heavily massage focused, you had more than a 1-to-1 staff to guest ratio, right? And these hydrothermal amenities, well, they're basically self-serve. And so you might have your pool attendants, locker room attendants, someone doing laundry or picking up towels, and the receptionist, right? I'm simplifying a little bit, but if you have 25 people there versus 50 versus 100, your labor is relatively flat. You might have one more person picking up towels. And so that's where you start to see these margins that could go from smaller spas of maybe 40% all the way up to, 70, 80%. We heard from one bathhouse operators that the margins on a bath pass alone were 98%.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, where do you find this, right? So,
and typically the better and more fixed operational costs you have, the better margins you get, because you can control them. They remain controllable. And right now, labor and the cost associated with labor, and I'm not talking about pay and compensation packages, I'm talking about retention bonuses, which we are paying monthly to keep people on staff, which is crazy when you think about it. But that's what we need to do to keep them coming is, for the most part, with the exception of those employee costs, our operational costs are fixed, which makes the margins really nice and really attractive to investors. So I'm referring back again to Marcus. When he was speaking, I was thinking to myself, I really need those bullet points. And I really want to do some research on technology, because if we can prove that when people come and experience our bathhouses, that there is a positive net effect from the pre-visit to the post-visit. That's our home run. That's the game changer. So that's what I'm thinking about. And I'm making notes, and I hope I'm not rambling, but it's the excitement and the passion coming out.
It's great. It really is.
Evidence-based wellness, you see. I mean, that's what we all need. It's so vitally important.
Yeah.
So Dawn, back over to you.
Thanks, Anne. Okay, this is this story I love. I'm sorry, it's you know, it made me smile the first time I read about it, but I'm absolutely delighted to introduce Paddy Lynch, who is the owner of the Schvitz in Detroit, the Schvitz Health Club. Now, because Paddy's story it has to be unique, and on the basis that he's a third-generation funeral director by profession, and a longtime resident of Detroit. In 2017, he purchased the Schvitz, the only historic bathhouse left in Detroit. And at the time, it was still operational, but in significant disrepair. In the past 5 years, Paddy and his team have increased the number of visitors from less than 100 a week to well over 500. It's open to members and guests since 1930. The Schvitz remains a storied landmark and a cultural institution that still offers the very best in ancient heat therapies and holistic healing. Paddy, this has something that's has fascinated me because it's a case of tell us your story. Please just tell us your story.
And you can hear me okay?
Yeah,
All
great,
right.
thanks.
Yeah, it's a strange one. I bought an old money pit house in Detroit over 10 years ago, and soon thereafter discovered the Schvitz. And I didn't have much interest in going inside. I wasn't that familiar with bathhouse culture, and the Schvitz had a seriously seedy reputation because the weekends had become lifestyle and swinger parties and things like that. But during the week, there was this tradition of men only on Wednesday and Thursday nights. And my buddy, whose dad used to go, convinced me to go in one day. And I went down the long hallway, and the place was kind of dingy and tired. And I thought, oh Lord. But I turned the corner, and there were like 10 or 12 older Jewish and Russian guys eating steaks in their robes and drinking vodka and socializing. And I thought, shit, I'll come back next week. And I just started going back. As a funeral director, my life can be a bit sad and stressful at times. And I found myself going to this old tired bathhouse in my neighborhood once a week to just totally detach. And then fast forward like 5 years, the old Soviet caretaker was in charge of brokering the deal. This old widow had owned it for years and it was falling apart. And he knew I was into restoration projects, and I got along with most people there. And long story short, in 2017, I bought it for 150 grand. And it needed a ton of work. And the biggest challenge, of course, was how do we get more people in this building? It was tired, and it had a reputation. There's the original Banya. The biggest factor for me, and I've said it more than a few times, is getting women involved. This was historically a men's club that women really didn't have much access to. And so we created 2 days a week where it was women only. And we created this essentially like a business incubator where we let all kinds of massage therapists and different healers, acupuncturists, Reiki, come in and basically use the facility at no charge. As long as people were paying the fee to get in, they could have all their services a la carte, and all those practitioners kept 100% of what they made. And that was really big to build the community of women in the space. And now we're open 6 days a week to the public. We're a few days a week men only, which was the tradition, a few days a week women only, and then a few days a week what we call co-ed, men and women. And then Saturdays are reserved for private parties by reservation only. That's how we survived COVID. We only had private parties during COVID, and we were averaging 3 or 4 every single day in 3-hour blocks. And it only took one staff member to open up the door and hand out towels. So even though our revenues were crushed, our expenses were drastically reduced as well. And we basically broke even through the pandemic. And now, because of that experience, our demand for the private parties has gone through the roof. We only offer it on Saturdays, so they're booked out like 3 months in advance. So my wife and I recently purchased a lakefront property an hour north of Detroit on Lake Huron, where we're going to build a sauna, and it'll be like a vacation rental experience where some of that private party demand can be shifted to the lake. And we're calling it Schvitz North because, again, it's only an hour north of the city. So yeah, the Schvitz is an enormous labor of love and challenging on many levels, but it's been incredibly rewarding. As you mentioned, we're averaging over 500 visitors a week now. And as people have said more than a few times, when you start to get that volume up, that's when your margins, actually make sense. And we probably operate on a really good month at like a 40 to 50% margin in Detroit.
Great, thank you. So next, I'm going to do a little spotlight on Alchemy Springs. Patty, you were definitely an inspiration. When I was first toying with the idea, I heard about the Schvitz and just looking at the sense of community, right? And how much people loved it and appreciated it, and how it brought all these different people together. That was certainly part of my inspiration. We touched very briefly on the history of Sutro baths. Rodney sort of gave you a little bit of a flavor. I think what was unique was, as he said, the mayor was inspired and grew up in the town Baden-Baden, which literally means bath, a bathhouse. And he wanted this grand experience that was accessible to all. And so really, what we want to do as a way to reconnect the San Francisco community coming out of COVID is to create a beautifully designed space that is for everybody. So accessible design and accessible wellness is really front and center. And Alchemy Springs is inspired by that feeling we get in nature. So it is the alchemic elements of water, fire, earth, and air. And you can see some of the amenities that we'll have, but it's 16,000 square feet indoors and another 2,500 square feet outside. If you look at the next slide, we actually have a couple of renders. So the whole space is sort of indoor to outdoor, and this will really be unique for San Francisco. I won't lie, it's been a design challenge. California Pool Code is one of the most strict in the country. So if we wanted to do what we wanted to do in any other state, it would be possible. But we're working with an incredible design firm, Lundberg Design, and they say constraints, breed innovation, right? So we have some amazing things that have come from those constraints. And lastly, I just wanted to touch, obviously, so from a programming and amenities standpoint, we're really inspired by Othership and others that are bringing community rituals into the space. So sound baths, speaker series, breath work, guided meditation. So programming in the actual amenities and around the amenities. We'll have treatment rooms, a private reserve lounge area, an elixir lounge and cafe, and then a retail boutique. So again, it's one of those spaces, as we heard, where there's a lot under one roof and you can stay a while. Lastly, I just want to close on central to us being a brand rooted in the community is we wanted our community to own and share in our success. So we actually started by doing a crowdfund, and I'm really proud to say that on a $250 minimum investment, we raised $392,000 from our community. So that doesn't say there's demand. I don't know what else does. So I think we're pretty much at time. I guess my last thing is, if you don't have one now, get ready, because there's an urban bathhouse coming to you very soon. Thank you all for attending today. We'll record the session and make that available to all the attendees. And we appreciate all the interaction over chat.
Thanks, Ann.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it. Bye.